For way too long, a massive, absolutely huge piece of the human health puzzle has been pretty much ignored or misunderstood, or honestly, just straight up dismissed. So today, we are diving deep into women's health, and we're going to start with a fundamental truth that medicine has been, well, painfully slow to accept. It all boils down to this simple but totally revolutionary idea from exercise physiologist Dr. Stacy Sims. Women are not little men. It sounds so obvious, right? But believe it or not, this is a truth that modern medicine is only just now starting to really wrap its head around. And that really begs the question, doesn't it? If we're so fundamentally different, right down to ourselves, why has the medical system for so long acted like we're just smaller versions of men? Well, the answer starts with a shocking, and I mean shocking, lack of data. So where does this all begin? It begins with data. Or, more accurately, a giant cavernous hole where the data should be. There is a massive gap in medical research, and it's had some really profound consequences for literally half the population. Okay, get this. It wasn't until the year 1993 that women were even required to be included in U.S. government-funded medical studies. 1993. That is not ancient history. That was just yesterday in medical terms. It's absolutely wild. And here's the thing. Even though women make up the majority of the population, 51%, our health is often treated like it's some kind of specialty item, a niche product. You see, diseases that only affect women, like endometriosis or PCOS, are just chronically underfunded and under-researched. And this chart right here just brilliantly shows why that research gap is so dangerous. We're talking about key differences at the genetic, cellular, and even organ level. A man's heart attack often involves what they call a widowmaker, a big blockage in a major artery. For women, it's often more diffuse, these tiny microvascular issues that are harder to spot. Even our muscle fibers and how we build and lose bone density follow completely different paths. This isn't just a minor detail, it's fundamental biology. So when you have this lack of data, it creates a culture of dismissal. Dr. Mary Haver shared this story from her medical training. A 40-year-old woman came in with a bunch of vague symptoms, and her senior doctor just labeled her a WW, a whiny woman. It is a shocking but sadly common example of the systemic bias that women face every day when they're just trying to get care. Okay, so that's the problem. But let's shift gears now, because I want to move from the problem to empowerment. One of the most powerful tools for understanding your own health has been there all along, and it is time we start looking at it in a whole new light. I want you to think of your menstrual cycle as a monthly report card. Seriously, it is a vital sign. It gives you direct feedback on everything, from your stress levels to your nutrition to your underlying hormonal health. It is so much more than just being about fertility. To put it simply, your cycle is basically the symphony of hormones. In the first half, what we call the follicular phase, estrogen is the star. It's rising, it's boosting your energy, your focus. Then, after ovulation, you head into the luteal phase. That's when progesterone takes the stage. And this hormone is more calming, but it can also make you feel more tired as your body gets ready for a potential pregnancy. So the big question is always, what's normal? Well, here's the secret. Normal is what's normal for you. Yeah, we have these textbook graphs and charts, but in reality, every woman's cycle has its own unique rhythm and its own variations. Really, the key sign of a healthy cycle is predictability. You should be able to look at a calendar and know within a few days, okay, my period's coming. If it's all over the place, if it's consistently irregular, that's your body sending you a message. It's a red flag that something else is off. And the consequences of this dismissal culture, of not listening to women's bodies, well, they become devastatingly clear when we look at some really common conditions. So let's talk about two that affect millions, but take, on average, a staggering 7 to 10 years to even get a diagnosis: endometriosis and PCOS. This is the real story of Liv, a team member from the Diary of a CEO podcast. It took her 17 years of agonizing pain, of being dismissed by doctors, of even having her appendix taken out for no reason, before she was finally diagnosed with severe endometriosis. Her story is absolutely heartbreaking, and it is devastatingly common. So Liv's story really shines a light on the nightmare of getting an endometriosis diagnosis. And a really similar pattern of just complete misunderstanding surrounds polycystic ovarian syndrome, or PCOS. And while, yeah, it's a leading cause of irregular cycles, it's not actually a problem with your ovaries. At its very core, PCOS is a metabolic condition. And this right here is the key. About 80%, a huge majority, of women with PCOS have something called insulin resistance. All that means is their body isn't using insulin the way it should, which then messes up hormone signals from the brain and creates this whole cascade of symptoms. So for so many of these issues, what's the first solution that's offered? Almost always, it's the birth control pill. But while it can be a really valuable tool, it is a much more complicated choice than we're often led to believe. So how does the pill actually work? Well, it basically just presses the pause button. It gives you synthetic hormones that tell your brain, hey, we're all good down here. And that stops the signal to the ovaries. No signal, no ovulation. It's incredibly effective at preventing pregnancy. But, and this is a huge but, by shutting down that natural cycle, the pill is effectively hiding that monthly report card that your body is trying to send you. It can mask the symptoms of underlying problems and has really significant impacts on everything from your bone density during the critical years you're building it to your mood and even your libido. And all of this brings us to our final section, how to take control of your future. Because when you understand your body, you can start making proactive choices, especially when it comes to your fertility. Now, this is a fact that just blows my mind. Unlike men who make new sperm every day, we women are born with all of the eggs we will ever have. It's a finite supply. You start with millions, but by the time you hit puberty, you're down to about 500,000. And out of all of those, you'll only actually ovulate around 400 in your entire lifetime. And this biological reality is why more and more women are starting to ask this very question. You know, as we build our careers and maybe decide to have kids later in life, how can we preserve our options for the future? Look, egg freezing is all about creating options. It's not a guarantee, but it is a smart game plan. By freezing your eggs when they're at their healthiest, and the science shows that's ideally before age 32, you are giving your future self agency. You're separating your life decisions from the ticking of that biological clock. So we end right back where we started. For centuries, women's health has been sidelined, but knowledge is power. The more we understand our own bodies and the more we demand better from the medical system, the more we can change the future, not just for ourselves, but for the generations of women to come. So the real question is, what will you do with this knowledge?